Life with Liliana and Friends.
Good evening and welcome to Life with Liliana and Friends. I'm really excited about today's episode. As you know, we're talking about topics to help navigate our lives. And we are going to be talking to a few different people in this season. And we've heard an interesting story last week to start off this segment. And we're talking now about greener pastures. So we've called this segment Greener Pastures. And so we're going to be exploring stories of those Fijians who have left our shores to go and live overseas, settle overseas, find employment overseas. And today we have an amazing young man. Actually, he's not so young anymore, but I'd love for you to meet my brother, Pareti, all the way from the UK. Hi, Siti.
Bola, Liliana, and Bola Banaka, everyone. Absolutely delighted to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so you should be, Siti. It is an honor to be on your older sister's show. So for those of you who have younger brothers, you will know that you just need to remind them up front to keep them in line. But Siti, thank you for joining today. I'm really excited that you can come on and meet everybody else. Everyone can see you and hear a little bit about your story. And just before we go into you, I just want to tell everyone, this brother of mine has done so many amazing things, and we don't have time to go into everything, but he's been in the Army for 22 years. He left straight out of high school when he was still 16. Was it 16 or 17, Siti? 17?
Yeah, it was probably closer to 18, 19. But
18,
yeah, around
right.
Around the age.
Okay, yes, around 18. And so he has now come to, I'm going to try and get this right. His rank is Warrant Officer 1. And he's always getting promoted. Yeah. See, he's always trying to beat his older sister. So he's always getting promoted. He's been doing so well. He's the first Fijian to do a lot of things. And we're going to hear a little bit about that. But the area he's in is bomb disposal. And his rank is actually the highest rank that you can get to as an enlisted soldier. And that's impressive. And, jokes aside, Siti, I'm so proud. I'm always proud of everything that you achieve. And so, again, I'm really thankful that you can come on and talk about your story in the hope that it's going to encourage and inspire, empower one person. Yeah. So why don't we just switch over to you? Now, before we go into the beginning, why don't you just tell us just very briefly about this story? Like I've said, you're the first of this and you're amazing. Do you want to just speak into that a little bit before we continue?
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Really humbling to hear. Just to start off with where my journey started and how I got to where I am is what you were suggesting there.
Like you're the first Fijian to do this. You're the first Fijian to do that. And how does it make you feel? What can you say to others who are kind of like, oh, wow, this is amazing, like being a Fijian representing in that way?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because that view sort of changed as I went on, because I realized that we were the first after many years. So naturally, doing something first or attempting a course first and passing it would mean that you're the first Fijian to attempt it and pass it. So I started, unless there was something significant where there was a lot more Fijians going for a particular qualification or whatever it may be, then I would probably carry that with a bit more weight. But certainly, being the first Fijian amongst the wider army to do things is something that I started to strive to do, which brought me a lot of value.
Yes, and interesting. You mentioned because you were the first Fijian to attempt it. Not so much because there were a lot of Fijians. And I really like that. When we go out into different spaces, we don't often think about, hang on, I can be the first to do this. And no one's done it. That's fine. I'm going to attempt it.
Yeah. And that's something that I had to learn. It certainly didn't come naturally. And I don't think it's very natural for us as Fijians to, just jump out there and put our head above the parapet, if you like. It's something that the army's taught me to do is, just put your neck out there and go for it and see what happens. And 9 times out of 10, you'll actually surprise yourself, and you'd will give you a lot more confidence in trying new things, which I'm certainly on that journey on at the moment.
Yes, awesome. So let's go back then. So now we talked a little bit about where you're at now and what an amazing job you've done. So take us back to when you were an 18-year-old and getting ready to go. And what were you feeling? What did you expect? Can you take us back to that point and describe that for us?
Yeah, it was an interesting part of interesting time of my life, really, because I had just finished school. I was working. I had a very modest job, I think, with Vodafone, something like data entry or something like that. But I really enjoyed it, which is surprising to me because I wasn't particularly motivated at school. And I was up at the crack of dawn and putting in a good shifts, good day's shift, and then doing the same thing continuously over the course of several months. So it surprised myself from that point, but I kind of knew that I had some sort of work ethic in me, which I hadn't really been exposed to before. So again, going back, I was in a sort of like lingering, floating, wasn't quite sure what I was going to do at that point. And school was probably a plan B. So I was looking for plan A, and then in a timely fashion, the British Army came over to recruit. And to me, it was just a no-brainer. I mean, I was like, right, this is what I'm going for. This is what I need to do, and this is the only option I have available to me now. So I just kind of put my head down, and I didn't really consider anything else, which helped me focus on what I needed to do. But I, at the same time, probably should have, been more appreciative of what was going around me, especially with the family. And I wasn't even thinking about how you guys were feeling. I was concentrating on myself. And also, one important factor in that is that at home things weren't the most stable, and we were, there was very challenging times for us. And as Dad always said, being the eldest boy, it's my responsibility to look after the family, and I had that on my shoulders growing up, and I thought, this is where I have to, I've got to take this opportunity, otherwise, we're probably going to end up in deep water. So that's what drove me to join. Was the part, the time I was at that point, plus what was going on.
But maybe let's just take a quick break. Let's let the viewers go and grab a cup of tea or water, or call people, let them know it's on, and then we will be back very shortly to continue this conversation with Siti.
Life with Liliana and Friends. Life with Liliana and Friends.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've got something nice and warm or cold to drink. And so we've just heard how Siti talked us through him leaving for the UK.
But I just want to mention as well, and I knew that once I had got to the UK, I had everything laid out for me, so I didn't have to think a job and things like that. Not like the other Fijians that would leave Fiji to go on to greener pastures, if you like. So so that's my story is a slightly more simpler one when in terms of leaving the UK. It's just as daunting in that respect. But
and I think the
simplicity.
Sorry. I think a lot of the young men will be able to relate to that, and I'd like to explore that a little bit deeper, Siti. So, Siti, tell us about you're on the plane, you've gotten there. The first 6 months, was it different to what you expected? Did everything happen smoothly? And maybe a little bit about your journey after that.
Yeah, thanks. The first 6 months, I mean, initially getting over anyway, the first thing, as you would expect, that hit me was the cold. We came over in February, and which is like the bitter one of the, it's still around the bitter winter months. So I still couldn't get my head around the sun being, you could see the sun and it's still being cold. So just getting over that fact was a big hurdle for me, let alone being set cold, wet, muddy, random field somewhere trying to play soldiers was a shock to the system. But you gradually get used to it, and as Fijian people are very resilient when it comes to these sort of challenges. And I was completely focused on the army. I did not, surprisingly, I didn't really think about home too much, in the fact that I was missing home. And I think I was just more than enough around me to distract me away from that fact. So there was never a moment where I was just on my own, thinking. Plus, I had a really good support network of boys that we joined with, that we were all in the same boat, and we just we really, really stuck together and helped each other along. And I was certainly one of the youngest, so. But I didn't want to show that, so I worked twice as hard, and if I needed to, and so it came with its challenges, but I was able to get through it with those around me. Us Fijians really stuck together. The 6 months went by really, really quickly, but what it showed me early on is, because I had an idea of how, say for example, how fit I was, or how clever I thought I was. But the army initially will thrust you into these situations to test your ability to your physical ability or mental aptitude. So I would, from a very early stage, um, surprise myself, and push myself that little bit further, and that really gave me that self-confidence, which I did not expect. um, so that carried on, and that theme sort of carried on throughout my time in the military, where I was always exploring what my potential was. And the military certainly gave me the tools to do that, and the opportunity to do that. And I'm still on that exciting journey now.
It took me a while. Good. So Siti, you said about we touched on your challenges very briefly. You said the cold was one of the main things. You also said the people around you were maybe older and a little bit more experienced, so that pushed you harder. Can you think of any other things that might be useful for others to hear when you think about challenges in your early days?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the usual challenges of immersing yourself in a totally different culture and in the way of life. But I would say that Dad gave me some really good advice when I left, and he said, like, you have to change your mentality, and keep the Fijian mentality with you, but you've got to really immerse yourself in the British way of thinking. And so I did that very early on, and sometimes it wasn't the most popular thing to do, but I just kind of stuck with it and see how far I went, and it kind of allowed me to push myself earlier on, or put myself forward early on.
So Siti, before you continue, can you just explain that to us a little bit? So you said Dad said keep the Fijian culture, if you like, some of that, but immerse yourself in the British. So what does it mean exactly?
So
can you give us an example of what that might look like?
So us as as a culture, really respectful. And one thing that I've seen is that when you go anywhere as a group, you stick together, and you don't tend to move outside that group, right? So for example, if I was with a group of Fijians, and then I'm like, right, so I'm the youngest, but there's a promotional course going on, so I'm going to put myself forward to go on that promotional course, whereas there's elders in the group who we were all at the same rank. So naturally, the hierarchy means that the oldest guy needs to go for the promotional course, and you don't even you need to wait your turn. Know your number, as we heard many times from our lovely mother. And I think those cultural instincts that we have was what Dad was referring to try and put that on the put that to one side. Still maintain your humility, and be modest in what you do, but also don't do that to your detriment, and try to push yourself forward where you can. And I was quite fortunate as the corps that I joined is the Royal Engineers, and we would move individually, so it's slightly easier for me to do. Whereas others that move as a group or a regiment, so this group, this community of Fijian soldiers would move together, and you'd have to get one breaking away from that circle, like breaking out of the village, for example, which is something that we are born with.
That's really interesting, Siti. That's really interesting, because I really believe that you knowing that early on had a big part to play in how well you did. Just knowing when to, and I love about our community and our culture that we look after each other. And I know for a fact that you always maintain that, but it's beautiful that when we go to new countries, we take the best of their cultures and the best of ours, and then we thrive. So why don't we come back and talk a little bit more about some of that, but we'll take another quick break and we'll be back shortly.
Life with Liliana and friends.
Welcome back. I hope you brought some friends with you now after the break. So we're still speaking to Siti. Siti's given us so much to think about already. But Siti, now we're going to talk very briefly about preparation for when you went away. Now in hindsight, 22 years. And if you look back to how you prepared yourself, some of it was intentional. I know you did a lot of training, physical training, but thinking about everything else around that, could you have prepared yourself better mentally, emotionally, spiritually, maybe? And maybe talk to us about some of the things that impacted your preparation, maybe your upbringing, maybe your friends. So what can we offer those who are thinking of joining the British Army? What lessons can you share? How can you prepare well for this journey of going into the British Army?
Thanks for the question. I was really thankful that I wasn't too bad in my preparation, because naturally, as you mentioned, I was doing a lot of training anyway and playing sport. I would say though that the endurance side of me was really not up to scratch, and that's one thing that the army doesn't like. Running, he's getting like to run, and I used to base like my running regime was from like point to point rather than knowing exactly how many miles I was running. So I used to think, running from town to home, that's quite a long way. That's like half an hour in the car. Most of that half an hour was probably set in traffic, but to me it was like a long way, and that was not nearly enough. So you had to be running like
that's like 4 miles, right? Or 3 miles.
Yeah.
3 miles. In Nambua. 3 miles. So what type of distances are you running when you got there?
You'd go out for a steady state run is what they would call it, and minimum is around 5-6 miles, and then you include some hills in between and things like that. So my lungs, I felt, weren't big enough for that, and I was trying to suck as much air in as possible, and I still couldn't breathe. And so that was one thing that I struggled with. And we're quite heavy boned anyway, as it is, and you used to see these whippets running past us, and all the Fijians are like in the back trying to catch up. But I would say as well though that when it came to things like when we were used to have heavy packs, these backpacks on our backs, we used to be right at the front with the best of them, sometimes leading from the front, because we were very robust in that sense. So physicality, a little tiny aspect in terms of endurance. I think the way we were brought up certainly helped. I was when you were away in boarding school, I had Jeremy and Julian to look after for most of the time. So I was able to look after myself as well as others very early on, which is life lesson. It's something that really important, like taking responsibility, being disciplined, and all those little lessons that we don't realize that we actually bring over, and those are the lessons that that just happen naturally throughout the course of of us growing up, and that's just down to our parents, who they are, which is quite interesting. Like going back to your previous sessions, where there's always been like that conversation where the old, and they're set in their ways and how we need to change. But in some cases, and like what you referred to earlier, was we need to take the best of what we have or what we had,
right,
and then take it forward. And I think some of those old school lessons were prepared me anyway for the journey in the army.
Yes,
So
I really like that, Siti. Can I just point out one thing? You mentioned about looking after the boys when you were younger. And I think, for viewers, we sometimes discount the little things that we are required to do now. We're always looking to bigger things, and we're not doing the small things well. I always believe in order for us to get to bigger things, we need to steward the small things well and do them faithfully, because they prepare us well, don't they? They build our character and they build behaviors.
Yes. No, I think that's a really good point there, where you said character building. That's a really, it's very topical at the moment, because to us in the army what we saw was character building, or what they put it forward as character building. Today, and in some instances, could be skewed and seen as bullying, because we were through really tough situations, or spoken to in a certain manner, and trying to get the best out of your character. But if that's not really done well, and you could apply the same thing to the home, so I don't know whether the way my relationship was with Dad, which I'm sure many other Fijian boys was with their fathers, and the lack of affection and all those things, was that character building, or was he just being like that? I still don't know. I mean, but it certainly made me a stronger character to join the army.
But it made you the person you are today. And sorry to interrupt you, Siti, but I just picked that up because we come from really Fijian father and son. That is the relationship generally. But when you come into the Western world, like we're talking about taking the best of things, I see you very different with your sons. Very different. And we need to be open to learn. We need to be open to learn.
I wasn't quite sure how to, when I had children, and how that relationship was going to be. But I did know that I didn't want the same growing up, what I had growing up.
Right.
And I don't mean this in the fact that I'm not here with my tissues saying I wish I was hugged more and things like that, because you just don't know what you don't know, right? And everybody else was exactly the same, and I don't regret that one bit. But I can see, and what can see exactly what you're saying is to keep the good and apply that to your everyday life.
Yes, and you've left us with a great lesson there, Siti, and just I think that's a key thing to take away. Just being faithful with what we have in our hands right now, in preparation for what's to come. Whether you're going to the British Army or you're going into something else, it's very important that we steward the season that we're in well. And so what? We actually have run out of time already. We've come to the end of our first section, and so we're going to be talking again in the second part. And I like that we've touched on the kids already, so we're going to go a bit more into this. For those of you who are watching, you may be surprised to know that Siti and his family are actually planning to relocate back to Fiji after 22 years away. So please join us in the next part, next Saturday at 8 p.m. And we're going to go in a little bit deeper into this and understand why and all of the story around that. But thank you for joining us this evening. We will see you next week. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Life with Liliana and Friends.
Sitiveni, you're supposed to be looking there where it says the break. 1 minute to break. So our director, chicken break.